Hello and welcome to today's breakthrough briefing, Leading Beyond Crisis, Reengaging, Regenerating and Reinventing. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Felicity Miners-Jones and I'll be hosting our session today. Now, everyone has been invited because you are part of Breakthrough's community. So you're probably already familiar with what Breakthrough does and who our panelists today are, but I'm going to introduce them quickly anyway. Breakthrough Global is a culture transformation agency. We work globally, weaving immersive events and digital experiences that champion and guide organizations through the complexities of business transformation and create enterprise-wide innovation, leadership, and business growth. Sharing their insights on today's Breakthrough briefing are Dr. Bart Sayle, CEO and founder of Breakthrough Global, and Zannah Ryabchuk, Breakthrough Global's managing director. There will be plenty of time at the end for Q&A. Please do submit questions throughout. There's an icon to do this towards the bottom of your screen. They will all be read and I'll put as many as possible to Bart and Zannah to answer. So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Bart.
Hello, everyone. I don't know whether it's morning where you are, or afternoon where you are, or evening where you are, because we've got a global audience. I'm in the USA. And on the East Coast, and Zannah's in London. So how I'd like to start is three powerful words. It's re-energize, regenerate, reinvent. And this is core actually to our program. So our programs contain each of those distinctions and processes. But the reason for doing this breakthrough briefing on this particular topic is because in our work currently with our clients, and I have a private roster of clients that I mentor and coach, this is something that's coming up frequently. It's coming up as a challenge. In some respects, it's coming up as something that people are not doing. And in other respects, it's coming up where people are doing it and getting powerful results from it. So it's about re-energizing you and your people. And by the end of this talk, I want you to go away and start this process of re-energizing yourself, re-energizing your people, of regenerating. So that's regenerating your business overall, but also regenerating your plans, regenerating your business plans. It's just not going to work, and it's not good enough to go back to work and reproduce rather than regenerate. The regenerate will take you onto a different trajectory with more acceleration and motivation. And then finally, reinvent. And we're at a point now where so many opportunities are here for us to reinvent our future. And so one of the things I'd like to ask before we go on is just to check in with you. How many of you are now what you would call pretty much fully back to work and working in the workplace? And if you just enter that into, yeah. So, there you go. Are you working from home, the office, or a hybrid of both? Just take a minute to do that, please. Wow, good. So we're getting most people still at home, remote. And then the next lot are doing both, which are businesses. So we're doing both. We've got people working from home, but we've also got times where we just need the team in the office, and we can talk more about that. And then there's very few that are back fully into the office. So this is going to be very relevant as we move through this. Listen, by the end of this, I want you to be able to do some work and get clarity and focus about where you are and where you're going. I want you to be able to build a winning game plan out of some of the things we've shared and some of the distinctions and some of the ideas that you'll trigger through this. I'd also like you to nail your first 100 days. Listen, the first 100 days is always the most important 100 days, wherever you're starting. And really go back and create sustainable energy and momentum. That's what we want from every one of you and from every one of your businesses. So let me start with mindset. Mindset is so important. It's one of the core principles of breakthrough. And what I say is that you cannot outperform your mindset. Many of you have heard me say that. I don't mind repeating it. Our mindset is the main limitation to our success and the company's success. And actually, if you think of the company, the culture of the company. Sorry about that. I think we told everybody to turn the phones off, but I didn't. The culture of your company, there's so much written about culture and company culture, but what we've done is we've distilled it to a number of key drivers which accounts for 80% of your culture. And these drivers are mindset. That's your mindset as a leader, because we're talking mainly just to leaders on this briefing. It's your mindset, and it's the collective mindset. So that's what the culture is made up of. It's made up of the behavior that flows from that and flows from that mindset. It's also reinforced by the language that you use, which reflects that mindset. And fundamentally, it's about the belief systems that you're building as a result of all of that. So that's culture. It's belief system, it's mindset, behavior, languaging, and belief systems. So what I want to start off with is mindset in this critical time during this pandemic, which is by no means over yet. We may have got a little bit more used to it, which could be dangerous, but it's certainly not over. And ask yourself, how have you met this crisis? What's your mindset been? And there's two broad mindsets that people meet something like this with. The first one is a reactive mindset. And in the reactive mindset, they basically see the situation, this sudden catastrophe, crisis, transformation across the world, hitting all of our lives, hitting all of our workspaces. There's been nothing like this in at least a century. So there's nobody at the moment in business who's managed their way through one of these before. It's almost like we actually need new eyes to look at this, a new brain to deal with it. And everybody in a way is a new CEO or a new leader in this place. So the reactive mindset sees this as a threat. And as soon as either an individual or an organization sees this as a threat, they go into more or less their fight or flight response. The third one is to freeze. So how did you react to this? How did your organization react to this? How are you now reacting to it? Yeah, is it a reaction? Because the reaction follows through. From that fight or flight is generated defensive behavior, defensive processes, defensive relationships. And that ultimately leads to negative energy states. And, you know, as a leader, if you're in a negative energy state, you've got tunnel vision. You don't have a broad perspective, you have a narrow perspective. You see a lot of things as a problem. And in the reactive state, our problems are magnified. Our problems seem to be all pervasive. Our problems seem to be permanent. So that's how we see them. That's the tunnel vision on how we react to something as a problem, as a threat. And then the negative energy that's produced can create a very unhappy, unstable, or even a toxic environment. And if we're leaders, we're really shaping that environment. So I think a lot of the things that we'll come to through this is you as a leader and you as a role model for some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Now, the other mindset, rather than a reactive one, is a responsive mindset. And the responsive mindset is a creative mindset. And in that creative, responsive mindset, the one thing we've got, which we hadn't got in the reactive mindset, is choice. The reactive mindset, there's no choice. It's a script. It's almost wired in. We've been through it so many times, and now we're applying it to a new context. The responsive mindset has choice, and it has choice before we actually then respond to it. It's why we call it a response. And in that area of choice, that's where we can use the best part of our brains to get the best interpretations of what are going on and the best ideas of what to do following this. There's been a theory in psychology that's come to the fore in the last couple of years that actually we have two systems of thinking. And one of them is very fast and one of them is slow. And the very fast thinking is wired into us. It was actually, that type of brain response was there before we were even humans. So it goes way back through, if you believe in evolution, it goes way back to as we evolved. And that's the fast thinking process, and that's the reactive process. But we've also developed as humans a slow thinking process. And that slow thinking, because we can map the brain now, the fast thinking process happens in the most primitive parts of the brain. The slow thinking process happens here in the cortex, which is how we've evolved, where we've evolved our social nature, where we've evolved our language, where we've evolved our ability to work with other people. All of that is where our slow thinking is, and that's choice. So you've either got reaction or choice. If we go through to the response, we've got lots of things open to us then. Here's where we don't fight or flight. What we do is we engage. So we actually see things in a very real way, and we look at how can we engage with this without resisting it, without fighting it, or without avoiding it and running away from it. I mean, you know, I've got lots of examples of since this happened of leaders and companies in a sort of denial about this, or downplaying it, or on the other extreme, getting completely panicked by it, getting overwhelmed by it, getting stressed, worrying about it all the time, and in effect becoming what I said was the third F. There's fight, flight, and freeze, and getting into that freeze mode. But in the creative cycle, in the responsive mindset, we engage, we interact with what's happening, and then we pull out all of our creative resources. We become actually more resourceful. So a key behavior for leaders is not about the resources they have and haven't got and can't get. It's about how resourceful are you. The more resourceful you are, you can actually generate the resources you need. So they are the two mindsets. And for those of you that have worked with us, you know the tool that we use for this, we call it the red train or the blue train. And it's very easy for the organization at the moment to get onto the red train. And it spirals down, and it drains energy, and you lose engagement, and everything becomes magnified. Stress is overpowering, overwhelm is overpowering. You don't want to do that. You need to get in your organization onto the blue train. And by the way, who drives the blue train? You do. You're the leader. So let's look at some of the impact of this and where it will show up for you. Well, like I said, you'll lose creativity and lose innovation. Innovation is a great way of getting onto the blue train, by the way. If you're the leader, your organization is going to be not only reacting to the outside and external threat, but reacting to you as a threat within the organization. And they can be disempowered. They can get unwell. They can get stressed. There's a feeling then, or they can get demotivated. There's also a feeling of that it's a real struggle. Now, you know, one of the things I say is effort is necessary, but struggle is optional. Struggle is all the effort that you do completely wrapped and laced with negative emotions. So struggle is something that comes when you've got this reactive way of working and running your business. We've got another poll for you here, and there we go. So think about your organization now, or, you know, from when this crisis started. Do you believe it was mainly reacting, mainly responding, or both? Okay, good. So thank you for that. You're very responsive, by the way. So that's the right mindset. Yeah, and we've got organizations in all of those. So reacting, responding, and both. And the both is where you've got, it's usually situational and context dependent. So in some things you react, and in other things you respond. The other big thing about a reactive organization is it gets very internally focused and loses perspective of the outside and what's happening with your consumers, your suppliers, and your competitors. Okay, good. So I want to come now to one of the things we're going to be doing is looking at some of the blind spots that we've experienced, but we've also experienced through our clients, and we feel it's valuable to share with you. And one of those areas broadly we can call communication, and the effectiveness of your communication, the amount of communication and its effectiveness. And before I do that, I want you to think about your organization. And one of the things about that is that you are existing at the moment in two organizations, not just one. And what we've got the formal organization, which you will see on your organizational charts. It's the boxes, it's the lines, the solid lines, and those dangerous dotted lines that cause so much trouble. And you know, that's very useful. So it's useful as a plan and a blueprint, and it's useful for accountabilities and planning and all of that. But the most important organization is the second organization that you are part of, and that's the informal organization. And these run alongside each other, the formal and the informal. And most of the actual life within an organization is in the informal organization. We don't really live in the formal one. We live in this informal organization. And some of you have been in a number of organizations can reflect now that what was different was the informal organizations amongst those that you've worked in. And for me, it's the informal organization that we need to look at, and particularly in a situation like this, which we've never had before. So we've never had a situation where people en masse are moved out of their offices and their workplaces into the home, distributed across the city or the country or even the globe. and start working in that remote way. And it's had its biggest impact on the informal organization. And that's what we want to look at. Zannah?
Yeah, I think not only has this had an impact on the informal organisation in terms of the simple kind of conversations that, you know, the so-called conversations around the water cooler or whatever that may be, it's also had a really big impact on the assumptions that we make. So essentially, I think that what we're finding is that leaders are making a lot of assumptions that their messages are being communicated and that people have got those messages and that they've understood them. And actually what we're finding is that they haven't. And people are really under communicating. This is now more important than ever, given that you're not seeing each other every day and you're not having these informal conversations. So, you know, it's simple things, but it's giving people anxiety. When there's a gap and it's not been filled with a piece of communication, when you don't have an understanding of something, when there's uncertainty, as human beings, we don't fill that gap with the kind of really, really happy movie of what's going on, do we? We fill it with the disaster movie. And so people are getting nervous. They're worried about job security. They're worried about what the priorities are for the business. They're worried about where we're heading. They're worried about 2021. I mean, you know, everybody's worried about 2021 and what it might mean for them. And when you don't really over communicate, and I mean, we would say this in ordinary times, but these are extraordinary times. When you don't over communicate, you allow these gaps to get bigger and bigger and a lot of negative gossip to emerge. We want gossip success. We don't want negative gossip. That's going to further damage people's motivation. So touch points. I mean, email's really ineffective. I don't know if you find this. I think you probably do, because I think it's a universal truth now, but email is so sequential. You need to create you know, tools like Slack. We've been using Slack for years, and a lot more of you now, I understand, are using informal tools like this. But it enables you to have a live communication. You know, it enables you to just pick up with people and ask a question here and do things in a much less sort of slow and sequential way. And that is very, very critical now that we're not sitting next to our colleagues or being able to just quickly pop into their office anymore. But beyond that, it's a simple one. It's picking up the phone. I mean, I was having a conversation with one of our clients a few weeks ago. And since then, I've had the same conversation with so many people where they say, I'm just stuck in back-to-back Zoom meetings or Teams meetings, and everything is scheduled. And I'm not able to have these spontaneous conversations where I pop into somebody's office to ask a question, or while we're having a coffee or lunch, we're coming up with these ideas, or I just need to ask something quickly. I can't do that. I have to schedule everything. And I just pushed back and I said, why? Why do you have to schedule everything? You can pick up the phone. And it was kind of like an anvil had been dropped on their head. They suddenly realized, oh my goodness, I can just pick up the phone. So please do that. And it can either be a you know, WhatsApp video call or a FaceTime call or something that's video but instantaneous, or you could just have a good old-fashioned phone call. I think, you know, get rid of email, use Slack, or heaven forbid, use the old-fashioned phone call. And this simple approach, I really think it will help to glue people together more. And get that informality, that informal communication flowing at a time when, as we've seen from that poll, so many of us are still working from home or conducting that hybrid, because we're really missing that.
Yeah, and I'd just add that I was a real resistor to Slack. As you know, I think it's an age thing. It's a millennial thing, I think. But I've seen the value of it since the change due to the pandemic. And what I see is that, by the way, we don't have shares in Slack. There's many apps like this.
Yes, others are available.
Getting people onto what these can do now is they can substitute and take the place, or actually no, it's actually a vehicle and a structure that you can recreate the informal organization, which for a lot of companies has been lost because of the change in the way we work and how we work and where we work. And I'm a great believer now that things like this, these apps, which are, you know, integrated into the way we work now, which is mainly with a laptop and Zoom and so on, can really help. And so get involved in those, and then come up with your own ideas of how to informal. By the way, informal doesn't mean that it's sort of about meeting for online drinks and things like that. Not at all. This is how you get your business done. This is as powerful as anything, that informal organization to get your results. And
I think it's really, really prevalent and really important and pertinent with people I know who've just joined companies for the first time. So imagine those poor souls, maybe it's some of you, who joined a company in maybe March or February and have never actually met their colleagues. They've never got that informal training of overhearing a conversation, overhearing how somebody speaks to a client on the phone, understanding how to use a database shortcut. You know, all of these really silly things that actually stack up to have a massive financial value, not only in your time investment, but actually in terms of the money that you're wasting by spending time working stuff out for yourself. So there's this huge informal training that goes on that a massive cohort of people are missing at the moment, and have missed, and are going to be very, very slow to catch up on. That's where it's important to kind of get these other informal channels in place so that they don't miss out on that. And also think about the formal training that maybe will now need to take place that didn't have to happen before because you had informal training for it. It's just something that you need to have in front of your mind and to be aware of.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found work is that the informal organization is organic, and it can't really be imposed. So as a leader, if I tried to impose some sort of informal communication system or regime, it wouldn't work. It's organic. It's got to evolve. Just give them the tools, give them the context, the opportunity, and it will evolve, because human beings are like that. That's what we want to do. And actually, news goes around an organization through the informal network far faster than formal. Good news and bad news. Make sure it's stoked with good news. Now, one thing, I don't know whether anybody has said this, but all the stuff that we're talking about, we're going to send you a...
Yeah.
Zannah, do you want to say a bit about
that?
Yeah,
well, I think tomorrow there's going to be, I know tomorrow there's going to be an email that will be sent out to everybody who's attended today. And we'll have a document that summarizes what Bart and I have been talking about, but it's also got the 8-point action plan that we're going to quickly run through at the end of this briefing before we go to the Q&A. So don't worry about kind of it being written down and things. We will be sending it to you, and there'll also be a recording of this sent to you as well, so that you've got the detail there too.
Great.
Should we move on to the second blind spot around intentionality? Yeah.
So the second blind spot is around, well, we call it dwindling intentionality. And, you know, I have to keep going back to in the current times where things are changing rapidly, where people are distant and working remotely, where there's uncertainty. And, you know, uncertainty is one of the prime human needs. So, you know, we have 6 fundamental human needs, and the first one of those is certainty. And certainty has disappeared for a lot of people, and uncertainty has replaced it. And in that uncertainty, it creates the gap for fear, for concern, anxiety, stress, and rumors, all within that uncertainty that we're living into. We used to live into much more certainty. Now we're living into uncertainty. And the other thing is that, you know, we get reports of this, that people are getting tired. It takes a lot of sustained energy to, especially if, as Zannah just said, you're doing back-to-back Zooms.
Massive pressure as well.
Pressure. There's also, there's not the same boundaries between home and work. And while there's a lot of advantages to that and working from home, there's also some issues with that in terms of boundaries and in terms of basically your life just being filled up with no distinctions. So what that can lead to is that, like the metaphor of the frog in boiling water, as the water starts to heat up, the frog doesn't know it's going to be in boiling water at one point. And like intentionality, it's a sort of a drip dwindle. And we're not with people in the same way where we can get our markers from and hold to our standards and hold ourselves and others accountable. So intentionality can dwindle to like a disappearing. And intentionality, as you know, is another, along with mindset, is another of our core principles. That actually intentionality, being intentional, is the way that we can really guarantee getting to our results. Intentionality in a way is all about results. Intentionality is the power we have to turn our intentions into realities. That's what we use. And intentionality is a personal power. It's a mindset. Intentionality is a mindset. It's a state. So, you know, it's the intersection of our psychology, emotions, and physiology. That intersection of those three things is our current state. And intentionality is a state of intentionality. So we need to make sure that we keep regenerating that. That's where we need regeneration, in our energy and our intentionality. And we need to catch ourselves. We need to do check-ins. And the more often that we do a check-in on where we are as far as intentionality is concerned, where our team is in terms of intentionality, where our organization is, then the more check-ins, the more frequent they are, the more we'll stay on that success path. And look, today, with all of the things I've talked about, the fact that now we're seeing the world through a laptop or through a phone, and that has lots of other things. So there's lots and lots of distractions. The amount of distractions, managing distractions is one of the key things for a team to do, because it's so easy to get distracted at this point. And what happens when intentionality dwindles for people? Well, some of you may remember we had a distinction which we called the 3 Ps. That in your organization, you have passengers, and passengers are going along with the journey, but they're not putting a great deal of effort into it. They're not really intentional about it. They're more guesso about it. They want their needs met, and in many respects, a passenger can feel very entitled, that they're owed something or so on. What you don't get is the ownership in the passengers. Now, ask yourself, how easy is it to be a passenger in this current state, in this current world? It's so very easy. The second P is a prisoner. Now, we've seen people, particularly in the States where I am, protesting about the fact that they feel prisoners because they've been asked to wear a mask, by the way. So, and they've been asked to social distance, or they've been asked to stay at home if they've been in contact, and people feel prisoners. So that's happening anyway. In organizations, now there's a lot more opportunities for people to have that prisoner mindset. So again, as a leader, we need to be aware of that, and we need to be relating to that, understanding it, but shifting it as well. And then the third P are the players. And, you know, the players, they are the ones that are really making things happen. And now they're under another challenge because they're not together as much as they were. And so a lot of them are feeling that they're working individually and still having to keep that player, that winning mentality together. So checking in on your intentionality, raising it as much as it needs, getting your team to check into that, role-playing this. And Zannah, I think you wanted to talk about...
Well, yeah, I think there's another angle to it as well, which is the intentionality of the people who are returning. So I just don't feel that a lot's being spoken about this, and I do think it's a blind spot. I think it's a blind spot in terms of, let's talk about, the people who've returned from furlough. So in your own country, you may have different sort of names for it, but essentially it's schemes that have been set up by governments across the world in order to make sure that the people who maybe were not able to work while the pandemic was at its height and while we were all kind of in different lockdowns were being paid some sort of financing or funding from the government. And so a lot of people in organisations have been sat at home, some of them for many, many months. And whether they returned a few months ago, they're returning now, or maybe they will be returning in the future. When they get back, I just don't see that a lot of planning has been put into their return to work. And it's almost a little bit like the kind of mindset and the reactions that women have when they return from maternity leave. They feel overwhelmed because they realize that the world has been moving on in a different way, and that maybe they've been at home not doing the work that others have been doing. They're really struggling with the new, very fast-paced way of working, because of course they've been doing a very, very slow pace back at home. They've maybe forgotten actually how to do their jobs. I know that sounds strange, but if you haven't done your job for 5 months, you can really forget the basics, like where to find stuff on your computer, and who's responsible for what project. And they feel a little bit undervalued. Often their projects have been given to other people, those that have been working hard and steering the ship, because of their lengthy absence. So what we're looking for here is, are you actually reintroducing, or have you reintroduced, by the way, it's never too late. So if you haven't done this yet, there's still time to do it. It's never too late. Have you come up with a plan of how you properly re-onboard people and reintroduce them to their roles? Giving them specifics around what are their new priorities? How's the business changed? How's the layout of the business changed? As if they were a new employee. And also, have you coached the people who have been there every day, day in, day out, through this very, very challenging time, on how to react to them? Because you know what? I'm spotting a lot of resentment building. I'm spotting resentment building with the people who've been there working hard all along, resenting the fact that the others have been on a perceived sort of holiday, and that those who have been on the perceived holiday are resenting those who have now sort of almost taken over their jobs and are sometimes in a slightly kind of almost dictatorial or managerial role where they weren't before. So you really need to work on making sure that there's a proper plan for these returning people, because, oh my goodness, if something's going to crank down people's engagement and intentionality, it is these feelings of being overwhelmed and of not understanding where they are and what their priorities are. And also that lack of cohesiveness of them feeling like they're part of the same team. You don't want to end up with the people feeling like they're on two opposing sides, when actually they're part of your one organisation or your one team. And I think this is a sort of slow burning underlying danger for intentionality in organisations, and it's going to lead to problems further down the road if it's not tackled now.
Good.
So I think the final blind spot that we have was around the line of one, and I've already started to sort of touch on it there. Look, lots of us have actually really enjoyed working from home. And actually lots of us have found it incredibly stressful. It's caused a lot of strain for people. And I think that the big challenge here that isn't necessarily understood as to some of this strain, it's not just about people barging in when you're in the middle of a call. It's not just about the stress of trying to like cook for your children and walk the dog and have really important meetings and do crisis management and all of these things. It's about proximity and the lack of proximity that we have. So you may not realise, but the physical distance that you have from people will directly correlate to the volume of interactions that you have and the cohesiveness of yourself as a team. And this came out of some research that was done by a guy called Thomas Allen. And I will just try and share a screenshot with you now. Let's see if I can do this with the wonders of technology. That shows very simply the curve that he came up with. So what he found was that for every meter, this is meter, yeah, so not far at all, every meter that you're away from someone and that you have a distance of separation, your frequency of communication diminishes significantly. And you can see the really big drop hits at just 8 meters. I mean, 8 meters, that's crazy. Think how many of us work even within an open plan office, like many more meters away from one another than that. So now, some of us are working in separate countries even. There's this huge separation issue, and this can really affect our feeling of interconnectedness, feeling of being united, feeling of being supported, You're missing those moments that you bump into people, as we were talking about before. It affects your communication. It affects your alignment. It affects your ability to make decisions. So this dramatic dip at the 8-meter mark has now been sort of exponentially exacerbated by the current situation that we're in, and we need to really keep that front of mind. It's not just about the fact that you're missing the conversations. There's something human about being in proximity to people. There's something human about our need to be nearby other human beings that is lacking at the moment, and it can sort of subconsciously and subtly erode your line of one. And you'll remember that line of one is our tool around a critical team value, that feeling of being in solidarity, all for one and one for all. So you need to think about the interactions that you do have that are via video call, the interactions that you maybe are able to safely have where you do go into the office. I know that some of our clients have been completely redesigning their office spaces so that it's all about meetings now. It's not about the day-to-day business. It's about creating shared working spaces where you can go and get creative and meet together as a team and come up with new ideas and work on a strategy, and that actually the kind of day-to-day will be done at home. You need to be thinking about that. I'm thinking about that for the long term, because this is, as Bart said before, this isn't going away anywhere. This is going to change the way we work permanently. So how can you make sure that you're reducing that risk of the distance of separation, and reducing that risk of feeling that you're not united and connected anymore as a team? So we've got...
Just one thing to add to that. Yeah. That, I talked about the 6 fundamental human needs, and certainty is the first. The second one is belonging.
Yeah.
You know, we're built to belong, and even though we cannot, and most of us on this call are working from home, and we can't get into these offices for that 3-meter distance, but we have to keep, even if we do, we have to keep the social distance. But again, let's do this virtually. You know, in the same way that, you know, get a tool that creates the informal organization virtually, then use the tools that are around, but use them powerfully to get those things that we call the blind spots. So, you know, the belongingness, the real line of one. And the line of one, by the way, we apply it first to teams that we work with, but as an organization, your organizational line of one is your culture. And looking for ways to actually keep the culture running and keep the culture strong and productive, and keep the culture as a sense of belonging, even though we're in this new world. And as Zannah says, it's not going to go back to what we believed was normal. So now we've got some recommendations, yeah, or ideas.
Yeah, an 8-step plan. So what I think, given the time now, and I want to definitely get to some of your questions, if we sort of quickly go through these actions, as I said, we're going to send them to you and then move straight to Q&A, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and these will be sent to you. So, so the first thing that we're recommending is really to be 10 times clearer about your priorities than you think is necessary, and that also brings up the whole area of priorities. You know, some of our clients are working with a view that everything is a priority, everything is important, and all that means is that there aren't any priorities and the whole organization is in overwhelm. I've got clients I'm working with now who are in that. So you as a leader need to get real clarity and focus around the priorities that you want at this time. And you know that if you've been to one of our programs, one of the things I say is, you've got your to-do list, but what is your not to-do list? Because that is what's going to create the priorities for you out of everything that has to be done. And what you can have is your to-do list, your not to-do list, and not to do now list. And just decide which things you're going to just put onto the back burner. The second one is create a meeting with your team to actually work on the team. And if you haven't done that, that's a great thing to do now. And in that, and this can be done virtually, in that, make sure that you do a diagnostic, a current reality of where people are. And you'd use our feedback frame. It's a great way to do it. So you're going to look at what's working now, what's not working yet, what's missing, and what's possible. And just doing that is going to make people feel that they're more connected, that they've got a voice, and that there's a sense of belonging. And I promise you that will generate things that then you can work on from then on. But working on the team is just as important as working on the business. The third one is make sure that you're clear, that you set expectations, but you're clear with those expectations of people around the remote working practices. One of the other things we're finding where things are not working and the stress is where leaders are not expressing their expectations clearly enough.
Or they're not role modeling it, are they, Bart? So maybe they say, we want this, you know, they're not walking the talk. They're saying, I want it this way, but then they'll be actually messaging people out of hours or whatever it might be. You need to really role model that.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. One of the things I'm talking about are the unexpressed expectations, particularly from leaders to their people, but also works the other way. So really work to get clarity around them. The fourth one is for you as a leader to actually model intentionality and this blue train behavior, this responsive mindset around your team, even virtually. In fact, get creative about doing it virtually, where there isn't as much body language to show things. And a lot of it comes down to facial expressions and the languaging itself. You remember the languaging that we use on intentionality, yeah? It's about removing words, it's about removing try, removing hope, and removing if. The fifth one is get an onboarding program for your returning associates, where you can cover all the things that are going to bring them up to speed. Like I said, I want you after this to create sustainable momentum. Nail your next 100 days. Maybe this is part of your next 100 days where you cover everything there. It's as if they are joining the organization for the first time. What would you be telling them? Check in on all that. Don't just assume it's done, it's known, I don't have to deal with that. The sixth one is commission yourself a coaching program to train yourself and your other leaders as high-performing coaches. Because today, as a leader, you also need to be a coach, and you need to know when to use coaching and when to use leadership as well as managing. So, you know, if you need to be a coach, get yourself onto a coaching program to train yourself as a coach. And if you want to know more about that, ask us. Number 7 is you know, many successful businesses have had significant breakthroughs in this crisis and in other crises. So, you know, in your virtual meeting program, in your next 100 days, hold a creative meeting that looks for these opportunities, that will mark the moment of where you've suddenly started to look for opportunities and get breakthroughs in the near term and also in the long term. Get people motivated, energized, excited. Make sure that you can, you know, the most successful cultures are the ones that are the innovative cultures. The ones, they're high performance, yes, but they're also innovative. And that isn't just innovation in your products and services, it's internal innovation as well. And then the eighth one is really pay attention to each individual's sense of belonging to the team and to the organization and going forward, because belonging as well as uncertainty are the two things that can really shift people into reactive mindsets, into stress and into overwhelm. So they are the 8 steps. We'll be sending you those. Okay, I think we're going to have a Q&A, are we?
Yeah, excellent. So Felicity, what questions have been coming in?
Actually, before we go into the Q&A,
go for it.
I just want to give everybody, because we've cut short some of the Q&A. I've been talking too much, but we want to make you an offer. So everybody that's appeared on this briefing, and thanks for that. It's really good to know that you're out there, even though I can't see you. But we want to make you an offer, and this is the offer. If there's anything that you want to follow up, or anything else that has been triggered by this, what we're offering is that we can arrange a call with you, and it's confidential and it's complimentary, and we can go into much more detail of your situation, and we can give you counsel and advice and so on, and that's entirely complimentary because you were on this call. I don't know who you should get in touch with for that. But I
think, yeah, either get in touch with Felicity or you can get in touch with myself. I think most of you have our email addresses anyway. You've all got Bart's email address. Felicity will be able to field those, even if Bart isn't able to. So yeah, do get in touch with us.
And by the way, that call can be anything up to an hour. So
yeah, exactly.
However long you want to spend, and it's entirely on you, and the value is for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bart. Right, Felicity, let's go to our first question.
Yes. Okay. So these are all completely confidential, just to reassure people as well. So we've had one question in saying, I'm experiencing a highly engaged team who are working super hard and deliver results. They're very effective, but over time, the fun element seems to be slipping more and more. Do you have any advice on how to rebuild that element back while continuing to work remotely?
Yeah, I'll take that one. We've got lots of examples of kind of people, and I think this was more prevalent at the start of the crisis, doing work drinks, work quizzes, you know, birthdays, all these sorts of things that you would normally maybe do after work on a Friday in the office. They've now gone into the virtual realm, and I do think there's definitely a space for that. I think that they really do make a difference, but it's also actually just letting people know that it doesn't always have to be serious. So yes, you can have these informal kind of fun and parties and things, but as a leader, you need to really reassure people and maybe point it out to them. They might not have realized. Don't do that in a way that's kind of making them wrong or making them feel they're not sort of living up to maybe your expectations. But I think that there's a way of just kind of reassuring them, explaining that actually, remember, you know, we're all in this together. I want this to be a fulfilling experience for you. We're all here as a line of one, and kind of just bring that fun element back. You know, make sure that there's space within your schedule for you to do the informal pieces as well. I think it's such an interesting question, and I expect a lot of people are experiencing the same thing. And that's again down to the pressure that Bart was talking about before, and just simply the lack of time that we all have as well. It's easy to remove those fun elements from our day-to-day at the moment.
I mean, I'd like to add to that in my experience, a sort of a manufactured fun, might work once, but it doesn't work. So I think
that's why I think they've dwindled off. You know, I think there's a place for it, but you need to.
So what you need it to be natural and authentic.
Yeah.
And I think just setting up the context for it, people will actually develop that. It's organic. You can do a lot as a leader by bringing fun things. It's not about having a separate period where, oh, let's have fun. It's about bringing fun into how you do the work.
Exactly.
And I think another way that you can do this, that's not precisely fun, but you did say that they're a high performance team. They're doing great work. They're working hard. Are you celebrating success?
Mm.
That's one thing where you can absolutely create a vehicle that you do on a regular basis, and within that, people will, if they don't have fun, they'll have enjoyed the experience of celebrating success.
Thank you. So our next question is how to meet people's physiological needs as the mornings and evenings get darker and colder. It's going to be a hard slog.
I've noticed that myself, getting up very early to go and walk the dog before we crack on at the moment. Yeah. Bart, do you want to start with that one?
I think with this, I mean, ultimately, people are accountable for their own physical needs. And as leaders, what we can do is we can give them resources, we can give them space for that. But the main thing that we can do is remove any of our behaviors that actually cause them to be, affect their well-being in a negative way. Because that's what I've seen. I've seen that actually that's one of the biggest problems with well-being, that it's undue pressure or unaware pressure or unthought of pressure with people. We can give them resources. So, there's various ways in terms of physiological state. We still use body work. So, on our virtual, because what we've done is, with this crisis, if you think about our business, if you've been on one of our businesses, one of our programs, it was all predicated on people traveling quite a long way to a venue with, up to 100 people meeting for up to 4 days face to face. I don't think we can do that now. And so immediately what we started to do is to transition our business. And now we've got 3 platforms. There's still a demand for the physical program. And we've still got bookings on a physical program for whenever it becomes okay to do that. So the physical program is still in existence. It's been modified a bit in terms of the numbers that can take part and so on. And now we've got a fully virtual experience of the program, which we've heard gives easily 80% of it if you were physically there. So we're really happy with that, because the other 20% is stuff that we can now do virtually, which we couldn't do face to face.
And I think, you look at
the third platform is the hybrid, and the hybrid seems to be becoming the most popular, actually. Sorry, Zannah.
No, sorry, I thought you'd finished. I was just going to say, to the point about the physiological needs, honestly, if Joe Wicks can do as well as he's done, I think that doing everything virtually really is the way forward, especially when it comes to body work or mind-body connection sessions. And it's just about reminding people that, as Bart says, they're responsible for their own energy, and getting people motivated. I mean, on our programs, as Bart was describing there, the virtual stuff, we don't just sit down as we've been doing today for this briefing. We're up, we're delivering exactly as we would if it was a live experience. And you need to be doing that with your teams. For God's sakes, don't just have everybody sat in front of their laptops all day. It's just dire. You've got to get them moving and have stand-up meetings. So what if you're in different rooms? You can still do these things. I think you've just got to get people energized again. All right, next question. I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Yeah,
it might have to be a quick fire one, but what's been your experience in driving productivity during the crisis? How do you keep your teams focused? That's to both of you.
Zannah?
Be cheerful. Be cheerful and ask nicely. I think productivity, it's all about it. It's a balancing act, isn't it? And productivity, as Bart was describing earlier on, we can often view as the input, like how hard are people working, how tired are they, how much time are they spending, versus the outcome. So for me, productivity is all about coming together as a team, setting really clear outcomes, setting really clear priorities from these outcomes of what people need to be doing, and then being leading from the front and being the person there that's not necessarily leading from the front by saying, I'm going to work longer and I'm going to work harder and show you all this kind of input that I can do, but lead from the front in terms of saying, like, we're all in this together. Let's focus on these priorities and we will get there. We will get there. And doing it with a smile. Felicity, I don't know if you agree with that. What do you think?
One thing I'd add is I came across a very interesting study where employees were asked what makes them more productive. Where do they feel more productive? And there were 3 main things. They said that they feel 2 to 3 times more productive. Now, whether they are is another matter, but they feel 3 to 3 times more productive when they're using their strengths, when they're allowed to use their strengths, when they're in an authentic, they can be authentic, and the workplace is authentic, and their leaders are authentic. and where they've got a real sense of belonging and being valued. That's why we've been talking about belonging. Actually, it stimulated me from this work, and that's something I'm going to use going forward, because I think that's great. Whether they can use their strengths and play to their strengths, where the environment, where they can be authentic in an authentic environment, and where they have a strong sense of belonging and valued. Yeah. So that, as a leader, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to create, and that's what we're creating.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. We're just at the hour, so I think we're going to have to draw to a close now.
Can I leave with one message?
Yeah.
And also, anyone whose questions we haven't answered, I'll just drop you an email with some responses. So if we haven't reached you today, Felicity can pass those on to me.
Okay, so look, remember our offer: confidential, complimentary, up to an hour, working entirely on you and your issues, and we're more than keen to do that. And then for you, as you go away from here, I want to reflect on the things that we said. It's re-energize, regenerate, reinvent. As a leader, get clarity and focus. Build a winning game plan. Nail your next 100 days, and go out of here and create sustainable momentum. And we wish you all well. We wish you to stay well. And we look forward to being with you again at our next breakthrough briefing. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.